Hello, everybody. I'm Dakota Gordon, and this is Dakota's Music World. Today, we're here at the Broward Center for the Performing Arts with guitar legend Steve Hackett. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. It's truly an honor.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, I'd like to start by talking a little bit about some of your earlier work with Genesis.
Sure, yeah.
Selling England by the Pound. It's such an iconic album. I think a lot of fans consider this to be Genesis's best album.
Yeah, I would say it's my favorite one as well, yes.
Yeah, Rolling Stone even put it in the top 10 best prog rock albums of all time.
Yeah, I was very happy with it at the time. I managed to, with Genesis, it wasn't always easy to get guitar moments on albums, very often, Genesis music was keyboard led, and so I'm very happy that there's a lot of guitar on that album, unusually for Genesis.
Yeah, and when you guys were touring with this album, you were touring in the U.S. for some of it.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
and John Lennon actually heard the music on the album.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
in New York.
Yeah. Yes.
And he complimented you guys. He said that he was a fan of your music. Was that kind of a turning point for you guys in confidence or momentum?
I think it did the band's confidence a lot of good. Peter Gabriel picked up on that, and he was telling me, just as we were about to leave New York, that Lennon had given an interview and said nice things about us. At that time, there was no such thing as social media. So the rest of America, in fact, the world was oblivious to the fact that he'd said that we were one of the bands that he was listening to, and a later report said that he considered us to be true sons of the Beatles. I'm still trying to get hold of the tapes of these interviews, because some people say, "Oh, we couldn't have possibly said that," but apparently did. So I'm very proud of that. At that time, we were leaving New York. And my memory is that we really couldn't get any gigs in the Midwest, so we could get gigs on the East Coast. We could get a foothold on the West Coast with the Roxy Club. So we were heading towards 3 sold-out nights at the Roxy, 2 shows a night, short sets, and that was great. But it would have been lovely to have been able to tweet, one of Lennon's favorite bands is, and then you can imagine that
suddenly get all these fans.
You would have suddenly, as opposed to what actually happened was, it was a very slow burn, because in those days the term progressive wasn't being used. Most audiences wanted a boogie band. They wanted a boogie bar band. Mm-hmm. And Genesis, and it was anything but that. But I think Selling England by the Pound sort of nailed our colours to the mast in terms of saying, okay, Selling England by the Pound, we were very English, and claiming to be all things English. So for Anglophiles, that was a great thing. For lovers of all things English, Anglican, whatever you call it, that was great. So we started to pick up, but it was slow at first. We had a small hit single on that album. As far as I remember, it was only a hit in the UK. It got into the top 30, maybe it might have gone to number 25, something like that. I Know What I Like, which was on that, which was a kind of sing-along tune for Genesis. Unusually for Genesis at that time, most of the songs were very, very long and complicated and typically proggy, I guess.
Yeah, you can definitely hear the Beatles' influence too.
Yeah.
With it kind of sounds like a little bit of Sgt. Pepper can be heard in there, and a little bit of Magical Mystery Tour style.
Yeah, I would have said that lyrically, the way Peter played with words, certainly that, and then of course he had a cuckoo moment during I Know What I Like. So I think, and I pushed for a 2-part harmony on the verse of that, which I felt made it more Lennon-McCartney, to be honest. So and my guitar work on it was initially criticised with the band. They initially said, "Oh, your guitar part sounds too much like George Harrison. We can't use it." But I persisted with it anyway.
That's funny. That's funny that they thought that, though, because some of these songs like Firth of Fifth.
Yeah.
That guitar solo is probably one of the most iconic rock guitar solos of all time.
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah, it stands the test of time. It happens to be a beautiful melody that that Tony wrote initially just for piano and played on piano in its original form, sounded a bit more like Eric Satie meets Ravel Piano Concerto, but done on guitar with the band sounding as symphonic as possible. I think it made it a little closer to, well, some said Indian music, some said, it's got epic moments that reflect other bands, but I thought it was a damn good melody, and I ran with that and improvised around it, and it's the longest Genesis guitar solo. It's about 3.5 minutes. I didn't normally get that amount of time to move within, the constraints of Genesis it was a songwriter's band. That was the big thing.
And then, also on this album, you can hear for Dancing with the Moonlit Night, you can hear that you're doing some really cool guitar techniques, and a lot of the stuff you're doing, like guitar tapping,
yes,
it wasn't really popularized until like Eddie Van Halen and Joe Satriani, but you were doing it before all those guys.
Yeah, I was doing it from 1971 with the Musical Box and Return of the Giant Hogweed. So sometimes we used to do harmonies I would be tapping and Tony would have his Hohner Pianet through a fuzz box. So he was trying to sound like a guitarist at that point. So, we had harmony tapping. There were some good moments.
How does it feel to be kind of part of that, like, founding fathers of that technique?
It's a funny thing because I think every day you think, well, have I ever done anything original, or do I just add a footnote to everything great that's ever happened? And I was thinking about this, and funnily enough, Bob Dylan was being self-deprecating when he said, well, I imagine what people will remember of me, if anything, is, and I'm paraphrasing him here, he said, a certain singing style, in a way, the sort of thing that he's going for a note, but he's below it and swoops above it, and he's making a hill out of it. So you can't criticize that tuning, when it's, sooner or later, da-da-da-da-da, so that's what he felt. So maybe what people will remember of me isn't the fact that I did, tons of albums and lots of things in different styles. That would be lovely. But, if you want to be anything like a household thing and you get written about in certain trade papers and what have you, they're going to say, this is the guy who came up with that technique. They're going to say that. So certainly that technique for electric guitar, yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your first solo album.
Yeah.
This album is just amazing, and it has some amazing people playing on it. But what's really cool to me, you actually released this while you were still with Genesis.
I did, yes.
And I think it was the first solo album by any of the members.
That's right, yeah.
How did it kind of feel after being used to having so many people in the decision process for what songs made the album and what they should sound like, to kind of get your own choice on everything for this one?
Well, it was a new experience being captain of your own ship, as it were. Up to then, you're quite right, yes. You described it very well. You need permission from everybody if you're in a democratic band, particularly if you're not a founder member of that band, and neither Phil Collins nor I were founder members. So it didn't mean that we would get our own way just because we happened to be worthy. So that was tough, and it was refreshing. At the same time, of course, the more freedom you get to express yourself, the more the pressure on the idea that maybe I wouldn't be able to produce a whole album of stuff. I'd only done occasional songs and parts of songs, and that's the group writing process. But to come up with a whole album, your challenge is there. So nobody really knew, least of all me, whether we would come away with a complete album or not. I had help from Mike Rutherford, from philcollins, John Acolyte. All these people were hugely helpful. And Phil was also not just drummer on it, but he was accompanist. He was singer.
He did vocals on a song?
Yeah, he did harmony vocals on one of the tunes, and I was very grateful to him, for doing that. Some things I'd written on Mellotron when I was at home. It wasn't all written on guitar. Some of it was written with flute in mind because it was my brother's flute debut in front of everybody. So he'd been at Cambridge studying languages. So he had that academic facility, whereas I was just aimed at music emotionally. And I didn't have the idea of I will go to university and learn to do anything properly. I just, at the age of leaving school at 16, like so many of my pals, we wanted to get out there and do something. I had friends who wanted to be filmmakers. I had friends who wanted to be in music, and some of us got to live the dream.
And I think what's so amazing about this album, it's also a lot of Genesis albums are like this too, but we don't see this enough today. It doesn't really feel like you're just listening to a track list of songs. It feels like you're almost reading a novel when you listen to this album. Everything flows into the next one, even if they're not the same style.
There was a lot of that idea, I think, at the time, and it's hard to get away from. I think ever since the Beatles did Sgt. Pepper, and also I think Abbey Road Side 2, there was that feeling that you were listening not just to one track at a time, but you were enjoying the journey of the introduction of things that were segue tunes. And Sgt. Pepper did that big time, of course, and that seemed to be an extraordinary journey. I mean, everyone was enthralled to that, particularly musicians. It was the stuff that we listened to, we learned, we made love to, we lived it. It was that. And I guess sometimes, that happens with stuff you do yourself. So if someone says to me, oh, yeah, we were listening to your album at the time and I was making love to my wife and now we have a baby daughter, that's extraordinary. Or sometimes people will say things to me like, can we use Celebration from A Midsummer Night's Dream? Can we use it for our wedding? And I say, oh, absolutely, yes. It was supposed to be a piece of music that was supposed to describe several weddings at the same time. So I remember when I was a kid, very young, about 7 or 8 years old, and listening to Tchaikovsky for the first time in the presence of a kid who was in a wheelchair, who had polio and had calipers and tiny legs. And I was aware listening to Tchaikovsky's piano concerto in B-flat minor on a wind-up gramophone in the 1950s. I've had lots of time to reflect on that, to realize that he obviously prized that very highly, and it's a kind of the uplift of the melody is so beautiful. The subtext of music, sorry to be so serious about it, but I always think the subtext of music is to heal people, is to re-energize them, to heal them. Sometimes it literally ends up being really good medicine for people. I don't know if you're aware of Oliver Sacks, the doctor who was British, who was most of his career was in the States, but he wrote the book that became the film Awakenings, and all his books dealt with, the far reaches of what the human mind could do, and the strangest illnesses. And one of the illnesses that stuck with me was this idea of a woman who would become absolutely frozen and couldn't move. She had a thing called akinesia, absolutely frozen. The only thing that enabled her to move was when she heard music that would move her emotionally. So there we are. That's a direct correlation between emotional uplift and physical movement. So I'm not wrong to say that the subtext of music is to do that.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. The last question I have for you,
Sure.
Can we expect any new music coming out this year or any studio albums?
Yeah, this year I've been both working with Steve Rothery of Marillion. He's the guitarist of Marillion, for those who don't know. And he and I have been working on an album for quite a few years. When we had spare time, we would get together and jam. And that's finally ready, and it's probably going to come out sometime in August. And I'm working on new stuff myself. And we're on this tour, we're premiering one of the tracks that's not available on the album yet, but we're doing it live, and it's interesting the way it's working.
I'll be excited to hear that tonight.
Yeah, it's called The Sea Inside, and when I hear it live, it almost sounds like a chase sequence. It's got that feeling, but it's also a love song, so it's got a classical influence, a cinematic soundtrack type feel to it. It sounds less like a rock band and more like an orchestra, really, or film soundtrack. It's got that thing, but it's very big, it's very drum heavy, and I'm still trying to get the guitar right on it live, but I'm probably going to balls it up. I better practice it before I go on stage.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. It was truly an honor.
Pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay.
Thank you so
And
much.
good luck in all things.